Welcome back to the Barrel Talk Podcast. This is episode 160. Joe and Nick went on the call. We are going to be continuing our series, deep diving, going into the offseason of every NFL team. This episode, I'm going to be talking about our former Jacksonville Jags 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We were Jacksonville Podcast 2 years ago. But looking at it from this perspective, this was obviously a rough year, for sure. I gave the season grade an F, just because everything about the season was bad.
Yeah.
I understand T-Law got hurt, which was a big reason why they were as bad as they were throughout stretches of the year, and they had Mac Jones at quarterback. But just in a realm of T-Law, if he was healthy, and you probably still, if he's healthy all year, you probably still don't fight for the division.
No.
When the division was very sorry this year. So that's a big red flag for me, because the team. Looking at the stats and the rankings, 26 in points per game, 26 in rush yards, 25th in total yards per game, 24th in pass yards, 27th in opponents' points per game, and 31st in opponents' yards per game total. So just defensively, everything bad. Mainly the big thing with the Jacksonvilles is the secondary. Definitely got to improve O-line play. And it's tough because I like Liam Cohen. I think he's going to do really, really good with Trevor Lawrence going forward, and did a really, really good job with Baker this past year. Baker having another really, really good year under him. It just sucks as all the corniness and all the Duval shit. It's people, I think he's going to sway different opinions, but I think he's going to do a really good job. And that's kind of the focus. The focus really should be improving the O-line and then improving that secondary. Because pass rush, you still have Josh Allen. So on that side of the ball. So it's just like your pass rush isn't the worst. It's just that secondary is so bad. And you completely, for some reason, lost your entire running game this year with ETN, so that didn't help at all. And then you have Mac Jones for most of the year. So going into it, your free agents, Brandon Sheriff, guard, we're going to let him go. Mac Jones, I wouldn't mind bringing him back. And he had stretches where him and Brian Thomas were cooking, even though they weren't winning games. Found some sort of flow and rhythm with Brian Thomas at some points throughout that back half of the year. And backup quarterback-wise I think Mac Jones is a safe bet compared to other guys that you could go.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So,
and I don't see a team trying to come out here and will Mac Jones away from you. So if you can bring him back, you might as well. Caleb Johnson bring back and Andre Sisco bring back, both of them. In terms of cap space and what you do have to work with outside of free agency, you have $34 million in cap space, and you have the 5th overall pick in the draft. If anything, out of this season, I wish you would have been a little bit worse still to just get into that top 3, because I feel like that top 3 would have been real candidate to trade out of and kind of get a lot going. Or if you wanted to stay, you would have had like Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, which at this point I don't think you're going to land being at 5. So obviously, like I said earlier, we need to improve the O-line play and more so just bring confidence back to T-Law. I feel like when I'm doing a lot of these deep dives, I could say they're adding this player and that player, but it's always going to come down to the coach and quarterback connection at the end of the day.
Yep.
We've seen it all across the league this past year for sure. And the confidence that I think Liam Cohen and his job is going to be just to bring the confidence back to T-Law. This is the number 1 overall pick. Like, this is still Trevor Lawrence is still people I feel like are completely out on Trevor Lawrence. And I know we say we were a big
100%.
Jacksonville Jaguars podcast 2 years ago, but I feel like people are starting to put him in a conversation where he's a game manager and not a real difference maker, when 2 years ago I feel like the narrative was completely different.
Like he was an up-and-coming franchise quarterback.
Yes. And I still feel like he is. I still feel like he is. He's still on the extension. You paid him for a reason. I can't say that one bad year where he was hurt both 2 times throughout the year makes him just not a difference maker.
It's the fact he got so much money, man. It's the fact that he's made like $55 million a year. That's why people are all over him, I think.
Because I could say the same about his play and him getting paid and how much money he got paid, comparing it to Jordan Love.
Yeah.
They both won one single playoff game and got paid for it. And I think that's just the business that we're living in right now as quarterbacks. If you can get that one playoff win at the perfect time, at the right time, you can really get paid from it.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing that I see from Jordan Love, in my opinion, who is kind of like viewed as this like kind of darling of the quarterback room from fans' perspective and kind of just the Packers as a whole. I don't really see anything crazy from Jordan Love that I can't see T-Law do in the right situation. And I feel like they're just looked at in completely different lights.
For sure.
Obviously, they're in different situations, but I think the gap that people probably would say is there isn't as big as it actually is. And I think that comes down to Liam Cohen and the job that he is going to have to do to bring his confidence back. Because that's what I think this whole offseason comes down to. If you can get a confident Trevor Lawrence going into next year, because you have weapons on offense, you have some talent on defense, you have the 5th overall pick, so you have some stuff you can do. But going into free agency, we let go of Brandon Sheriff. We're going to replace him with Will Hernandez, guard out of Arizona. Byron Murphy from Minnesota, because they need secondary help. He's coming off of a really, really good year. Minnesota can do a lot of things with this offseason. And if you do have the cap space to go out and pay a premium corner who is really young and can really kind of be that number one corner for you like he was this past year in Minnesota for the most part, Byron Murphy, I think, could be up there as well. Javon Holland out of Miami, safety, more secondary help. And Christian Kirk's a free agent. I think you're just going to let him walk as well. You were already in talks to trade him.
Right.
And then he got hurt coming off of an injury.
Here's the thing. He got so much money in that last contract. Like, buddy, it'd be such a pay cut.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're coming off that injury, too. Like, you're going to be making so much less money. But I don't know if they're going to be able to come to an agreement on that.
I do think he ends up just finding a deal elsewhere. Like if you're like the Steelers, you could just go out and just sign him. Like you were going to trade for him, even though he's coming off the injury. Like he's better off going somewhere else anyways. And I do have you picking up a kind of a steal for what he was doing with the Rams, and DeMarcus Robinson. You're just looking at somebody who can play in between Evan Ingram, who you still have a tight end, one of the more elite pass catching tight ends, and Brian Thomas Jr., obviously. So you're just looking at DeMarcus Robinson, who was honestly really their number 2 in the back half of the year, next to Puka, outside Cooper Kupp, who is a free agent. But now it's kind of weird because Cooper Kupp is going to probably get traded. So it's like, do they see DeMarcus Robinson as like their number 2, because he was really, really good in the back half of the year. So I'm like, okay, I'm interested to see. This kind of just changes his availability and how much he's going to get paid in free agency if they are going to look to move Kupp. But those were like my main 4 free agent signings. You get something to improve your O-line, secondary help, and then another receiver to kind of replace Christian Kirk. And you're also losing Gabe Davis as well, who you don't need to bring back.
Nope.
So you're kind of looking at a room where you have ETN again, T-Law, Brian Thomas, DeMarcus Robinson, Evan Ingram in this offense. And sometimes less can be more. I think adding Gabe Davis really didn't do anything for you when you already had Kirk and Evan Ingram and Brian Thomas Jr. last year. So, like, none of that really, I think less can be more in this situation. With the 5th pick, we're kind of taking a page out of the Chargers book, going with Will Campbell out of LSU, shoring up our left tackle with Little, right tackle with Will Campbell. So looking at that, you have 2 young tackles to kind of protect Trevor Lawrence throughout the future, kind of what you see with the Joe Alt pick from the Chargers last year. Just getting him protection is going to obviously build his confidence for what they want to do. Because I look at the 5th pick, it's kind of like a little bit of no man's land. I do think there's kind of a little bit of a gap in this draft from the top 4 to 5 guys. And then there's kind of like that back half. But Will Campbell's the best tackle in the draft. You can shore up a position for the long haul with him and Little, who you already have extended. So your O-line, worried about the interior. I think your run game could desperately improve from just an improved O-line unit as well.
Yep.
So that's where I went with the 5th pick. You
got Bigsby and ETN, which are still good backs.
Yeah. And Bigsby, I feel like, has this burst to him. It's kind of what Liam Cohen was working with like Rachaad White and Bucky Irving. And I just feel like I just feel like Doug Peterson was just not utilizing them in the right ways last year, to where it was just like, there's a reason Doug Peterson isn't there anymore. But that's a big thing that because it's not to the point of like adding somebody at the running back position. ETN could have just had a down year. I mean, this is somebody who a year before was one of the better backs
top 10 back.
Yeah, so I think it was just more so a down year for the team, and I do think that run game will bounce back to where it was a year before this past one. But otherwise, back half of the draft and the other rounds, I will look to maybe target another lineman just for some depth at that position. You know how hurt alignment can be. Maybe add maybe if you see a wide receiver in the middle rounds that you do like to kind of pair up with a Brian Thomas Jr. for the future, because Evan Ingram is older, on the older side, and you never know what you're going to get wide receiver wise out of free agency. So if you're going to add something in those middle parts of the draft, you could add a receiver, pair him up with Brian Thomas if you wanted to go that route. But other than that, you really got to look at just adding depth in the defensive side of the ball, because I mean, you're in a tough, man. Yeah, you got to get some kind of, you got to have a hit in this draft. And I think Will Campbell can obviously be a hit for you, a franchise tackle, but in those later rounds, you want to get some kind of more ready now guys, because you don't really have too much cap space because you are paying too low. So you got to kind of really hit in this draft. That's kind of where you get when you're an NFL team and you kind of pay your quarterback. You have to be really efficient in the draft.
Yep.
To really improve your roster. And I feel like that's the area they are. But like the Jags in this division, like I know the Texans could dealt with a lot this year injury wise, but like the Colts are still like whatever. The Titans have the number 1 pick. Like the Titans are in a rebuild phase as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, if you have a good offseason, you get T-Law playing back how he should, there's no reason they can't compete with the Texans, in my opinion, for the division. I know the Texans kind of, in my opinion, have a top 5 defensive unit, but it seems like that offense has kind of sputtered this year.
Sure.
It sputtered this year. So, in my opinion, I don't think the Jags this offseason can get to where the Texans are defensively, but I think offensively, they can be a lot better team with Liam Cohen and bringing T-Law's confidence back to where it should be, because that's where I feel like it comes down to. You can add all this stuff, but like I said at the start, it's all about the connection of Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence going forward. You bring him in for a reason, and took you a lot to bring him in. You had to fire your GM to bring him in.
Yeah, it was dramatic as fuck.
Yeah, so
it happened.
It looked like a lot of people, just on the surface, didn't want the Jags job, but it turned out they just didn't want to work with the GM. So you get the GM out of there, bring in Liam Cohen, who I think is a great pairing. I think you're looking at your offensive mind with a young quarterback that can go. Yep. That we've seen kind of the trend, that's how that's been going on in the NFL. So that connection, if that can build, and you hit in the draft with Will Campbell, you bring some more protection, and you get that run game back going, which is something that was huge in Tampa with Liam Cohen and that scheme and system over there, relying on the run a ton and really just allowing Baker to make the throws when needed, because they were really, really good in the run game with Tampa last year. I expect that to translate to Jacksonville, because it's not like they have slouches at running back. So you bring all those things together in kind of a weaker division in the AFC. I know you're still in the AFC. It's a gauntlet out there. But in your own division, I feel like they can easily compete with the Texans next year for that division.
Yeah, for sure. They can definitely. Like you said, they need to hit on draft picks.
Yeah, they can just hit on draft capital, honestly. I think they're going to be in a really good spot, because they have the difference makers already. Like Brian Thomas Jr. already looks like a star. Like he's going to be in the same realm as like Malik Neighbors for this draft class for the future. Like you have, in my opinion, a franchise level quarterback. You have a really good pass catching tight end. Like you have an ability to have a really, really good run game. We've seen the run game be effective before. It just needs to get back to it. And I feel like that's going to be a big scheme thing, but they're in a really good spot. I feel like the Jags can be primed for a bounce back year if they make the right moves this offseason.
I think so too.
But that's really all I had about Jacksonville. If you wanted to add anything else.
No, I think you're right. I think they could be poised for just like a 1 year off, and not even like saying like they're going to be like title contenders or anything like that, but just to potentially win your division and start making progress, start winning playoff games.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to be okay. They just again have to hit on draft picks. Got to get that offense back to just normalcy. Like everything was just felt like chaotic and crazy last year. So get it back to just being normal, and like you said, get that run game going, and I think they're going to be fine.
A lot of like the scheming for how bad the offense was, I feel like just looking at it from a scheme perspective, like a lot of their third down plays and their route concepts were just terrible as well. I just feel like that also comes with having maybe too many mouths to feed on that offense, especially at the start of the year, because you got a rookie wide receiver that you're trying to develop with Christian Kirk, who has been the number 1 in Jacksonville for however long. And then you bring in Gabe Davis for no reason really, and then you have Evan Ingram. Like there's just a lot going on over in Jacksonville last year, to where I feel like now with a little bit of retooling, not a rebuild, a little bit of retooling, I think they can be right back to where they were before this year.
Yeah, me too.
But that is all I had on the Jacksonville Jaguars offseason and what they should be looking to do going into next year to kind of improve on a bad year and kind of bounce back and get back to competing for that division. But I can wrap it up there. Thank you guys for tuning into the Barrel Talk podcast. Obviously, tune in to future episodes.